which light is coming and the direction from which a shadow is coming. So we haven't got an image yet. All we've got is the direction of light. Now the cup can steadily and slowly over evolutionary time close over until you end up with a little hole at the top. And the little hole at the top, the same principles working all the way, that light coming from that direction hits that part of the retina, and from that direction hits this part of the retina. But because there's a hole, it's rather more precisely, not exactly focused, but light from there hits there, light from there hits there, light from there hits there, because it's got to get through the hole. We're moving towards a pinhole camera. Now, a pinhole camera, if you make the hole small enough, and remember we're having a smooth gradient of closing up the hole, if you make the hole small enough, then it makes a sharp, focused image. The trouble with a pinhole camera is that the image is very dim because very little light can get through the pinhole. What you need is a lens, because what a lens does is gather light from different directions and focus it on a point. Instead of it having to go right through the middle of the hole, it can be gathered from a wider range of sources. Now, a lens is not difficult to arrange. Any old chunk of transparent gubbins will do the job better than a pinhole. So once again, we've got a slow, gradual improvement. Any old lump of gubbins, transparent, is better than nothing, and then the lens simply improves its shape gradually, 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 gradually. It's got to be gradually. Every step has got to be a slight improvement over the previous one. You get a lens.
Can I just ask you though, Richard?
Yes.
How long did this process take?
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, we've got hundreds of millions of years to play with, because that's what geological time gives us. I mean, we've got maybe 1 billion years since the first eye, since the first focusing eye appeared.
What about the trilobite?
Trilobites have very beautiful eyes.
Very, very clever. I mean, it's amazing.
They have compound eyes, which is what modern insects and crustaceans have.
But the trilobite has, in the fossil record, is exactly the same today as it was, or in that sense, it didn't evolve. It had those lenses.
Trilobites today.
No, I mean, but it had the lens mechanism, which is
no,
quite powerful.
Well, trilobites have compound eyes, which is a very different principle and very interesting principle. It doesn't focus quite as sharp an image as our eyes do, but it is a very beautiful thing. And trilobites do go back hundreds of millions of years, 500 million years, 500 million years. It must have taken some time before trilobites came on the scene, but even trilobites are relatively recent compared to the age of the Earth, which is 4.5 billion years old.
Obviously, of course, as a creationist or believer in creation, the Book of Genesis, you know, I would disagree with that. But
what would you disagree with?
With the time.
How old do you think the world is then?
I would say that because I'm a Bible-believing Christian, that I believe that the Book of Genesis is in actual fact the record, because Christ as well referred often to the Book of Genesis, that in the beginning, Adam and Eve, and I know that. But before we get onto that, because we can come back to that, is that there is an email that came in with regards to the eye, which I'd like to read, because it's quite intelligently written. In Richard's book, The Greatest Show on Earth, and he gives the pages, etc., he claims the retina could not have been designed, as creationists say, because the photoreceptors are at the back rather than the front. So it is back to front. And it was a fact, he said, if it was created, it was the design of an idiot. Just stop there. Recent research has shown that there are cells in the retina that guide light to the photoreceptors and refocus it. The scientists who did this research described the light-guiding cells in the retina structure with the words optimal design for improving the sharpness of images, and that's from Physical Review letters, etc., etc. Will Richard admit he is wrong, since he is not an expert on optics and the researchers are?
Well, no, I will not admit I'm wrong. This is a very interesting case. The retina is back to front. The retina of the vertebrate eye is back to front, in the sense that the light-sensitive cells are pointing away from the light. Now, the light-sensitive cells are connected to the brain via nerves, and any sensible designer would have had the nerves behind the light-sensitive cells, which is in fact the way they are in mollusks, for example, octopuses, which have rather good eyes, rather like ours, with the difference being that the light-sensitive cells point towards the light, and the wires connecting it to the brain lead backwards to the brain, which is the sensible way to do it. Now, the vertebrate eye is back to front, so that the wires that connect the light-sensitive cells to the brain are running along the front of the retina. That means that the light has to penetrate this forest of wires, nerves, before it hits the light-sensitive cells which are facing backwards. Now, it's very easy to see why this happened. It happened for historical reasons, and there's no doubt about that. Now, it is, of course, true that humans, for example, and I mentioned hawks before, see much better than octopuses. So in spite of the fact that our eye has this design flaw, we have better eyes because natural selection comes along afterwards and cleans up after the original mess that was made by this fundamental design flaw. Natural selection came along afterwards and made all sorts of little titivations which have the effect of giving us really rather good vision. And that happens again and again. It's very interesting that you get a bungle to begin with, and then rather than correct the bungle, what natural selection does is to come along and make little titivations, little tinkerings, which sort of make up for the mistake. And that's a very interesting phenomenon.
I'd like to go back to the timing.
Yes.
Of when do you say that we reached our optimum where we're at today? How far back would you have to go? 10?
Oh, I wouldn't use a word like optimum. I mean,
because you think we're still evolving, obviously. Well, but where we're at today, then?
Well, what I'd prefer to say is that natural selection is constantly working, and the environment is constantly changing, if only because the predators, the enemies, the parasites of any particular species are also evolving. And so you never really reach a sort of finished, settled optimum. There's always more improvement that can happen.
What about other parts of the body, which to me, I mean, as I say, just as a layman, I had to come to terms with, how on earth did we function? And the heart, for example, the lungs, the liver, the kidneys, and particularly, don't want to be too personal, but how do I take a leak if I have to wake up a few million years to do that?
Wait a minute, I don't understand.
Well, if I was to go to the toilet,
yes.
I mean, how did we evolve with the ability to release waste if we were waiting for certain organs to develop?
Well, no, it's not really like that.
I know it's a simple question, but I'm a simple man.
I mean, you don't wait millions of years. It all happens. There's a continual improvement going on all the time, continual changing. I mean, the way things work is different now from the way it used to be. I mean, I tried to give you a rather detailed exposition of the eye, and you switched to something else. I mean, did you find that convincing, what I said about the eye?
Well, not really. Well, but I understand.
Well,
I don't mean it condescending,
but I gave you the gradual ramp of improvement. What I didn't quite have time to say is that if you look around the animal kingdom today, and you mentioned trilobites, but there are lots and lots of animals which show eyes in all sorts of what we might think of as states of sort of half development. I mean, there are flatworms that have just a cup for an eye, no lens, not even a pinhole. There are animals like Nautilus, which is a sort of coiled up squid kind of thing in a shell, which has a pinhole camera for an eye. So each step of the way that I told you about might have been hypothetical, but you can find an animal somewhere around the animal kingdom, a living animal, which actually does it. So I don't understand why you don't find that convincing.